Hey, welcome back. So if you've seen my previous video, I detailed how you can take regular looking QR codes and transform them into something a little more visual. Well, today I just want to show you really quickly what I think is a better example, given the nature of last video. It certainly demonstrated a lot of the tools and parameters you might need, but I don't think the example was the absolute best. Of course, there are a lot of different routes you can take when it comes to making visual QR codes. So I figure I'll probably release a couple different videos showcasing the sorts of different QR codes you can make and how you can change them or make them better even after generating. So just real quick, we're going to go over the same parameters. We're using the Rev animated model. We've got our prompt here. We're going to create a sort of jungle scene. This is the same QR code as last time. Just links to my QR code site where I make these for businesses, local restaurants, and restaurants abroad, and really just any sort of company. It's definitely a growing trend. Here, all of these are fairly the same. We're using the tile sampler. So if we just generate here again, you'll notice I'm using, here I'll show you the generation, but you'll notice here I'm using a preset seed, and that is because I got super lucky with this one. It scanned on the first go, and it looks aesthetically pleasing, at least in my interpretation, but I think you'll find it to look pretty amazing as well. This is the result we have. So we have this really cool, these cool rope structures. We've got these fairly coherent, huts. We've got floating bridges and this interesting sort of compartmentalization with the squares up here. Overall, a pretty decent generation, and it scans. I noticed this scanned, or my phone picked it up initially. Sometimes it still doesn't want to scan it. If you're on Android, you might even have a little more difficulty, as I've been experimenting in the past, but generally this scans, especially if you're a decent distance away. So what are some things you can do with this? Well, I mean, this code already looks fantastic. It's fairly well themed. If you were going for a jungle theme, you've pretty much got everything you could want, I guess. I mean, you could certainly add elements in later, but just to show you some things that I've done, we're going to go over to Photopea first, actually. Just a quick demo here. What I like to do with these codes, let me just crank this all the way up to 100%. If your generated image isn't quite scanning, or say you get the yellow highlight or whatever highlight shows up, right? Your phone recognizes it as a QR code, but it can't actually interpolate the data. What I like to do is bring it in. You can bring it into Photopea, Photoshop, or Canva, whatever you like or prefer to use, whichever's easier, and overlay the original QR code onto your generated image. So I'm using the darken mixer here. You can use normal or multiply. I don't know if it really matters that much. I just like to use darken because, as you can see, the lighter parts of my image are not affected. And what I will usually do is like 10%, very slight change, but it does bring out the contrast a little bit more. And usually when I bump it up to 10%, sometimes even less, my phone will just say, okay, I see the code now, So it's a very subtle change, and it doesn't really detract from the overall aesthetic, at least in my opinion, besides just the increased contrast. Now we'll just close out of that. So here in DALL-E, what I've done, if you notice, I was rendering this at 768 pixels, and DALL-E, of course, uses 1,000 pixels. You can generate 1,000 by 1,000 frames. So what I've done here is I've added sort of an out-painting thing. I did a thing. So we have a generation frame here, 1024 by 1024, and I just gave sort of a little more descriptive prompt. The thing I do like about DALL-E is it always gives you 4 options that you can sort of cycle through. I really like this one because this is closer to what I had in mind. I wanted to be honest, I wanted the rest of the background to be like this sort of off-white eggshell color, but it's fine. You get some interesting generations. Something like this, right? But this one doesn't look too interesting. This one is a little more interesting. This one just looks like a painting on a wall. Not quite the vibe I was going for, but this one is I think a little more integrated. You've got leaves sort of hanging over. The leaves look fairly coherent. You've got some interesting background details, and of course this very interesting frame, rope-like frame. So this is the one I decided to go with. In this way, your QR code looks less like a QR code because you've integrated it even more into the image. And this does scan for me, at least. It may not for you. Again, if you do have that issue, you can always take the original QR code and just sort of increase the contrast by masking it. But just some quick tips I wanted to give to you if you're making these codes for yourself. Of course, here's my entire workflow if you haven't taken note already, so feel free to copy all the settings and do whatever you want with it. Thanks, hope you enjoyed this tutorial.